Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, folks, I want to get into the scoreboard mentality. Some might call it the scoreboard approach, but I will just use scoreboard mentality. First of all, that's how I framed it in the chapter of the book as well. So I'm just going to stick with that. So think about the scoreboard mentality. What does that mean to you? A lot of times when we're kids in a playground, we run races against one another. We play in, very light version of sports when we're young, games, that sort of thing. And we're taught very, from a very early age, how to be pretty competitive. And we have fun doing it. I'll race you across the park. I'll swim to the dock, let's race to the dock, whatever it is, right? There's always these subtle, fun things that we remember growing up, but really, the scoreboard mentality goes even well beyond that. Mentality goes into our own biology. Even NASA, I believe it was in 2021, springtime of 2021, found out doing research that the mitochondria actually races toward sunlight for energy, right? So it's part of that struggle to survive. It's an innate survival mechanism within us. Obviously, as we're intellectual sort, we end up intellectualizing our scoreboard mentality, right? That survival nature also goes into our play. But then our culture is built around more than just play, right? We often compete. Different organizations compete against one another, and we compete against one another sometimes, right? But we can also take anything, just like everything, we can take it to an unhealthy place. So, examples of that would be a person who obsesses that, say, money is the scoreboard feature. That's the one tool I use to measure how successful or how happy I'm allowing myself to be, is based on how big my bank account is. For another person, it might be how big their house is, how fast their car is. It's different for everyone, although there are commonalities, right? And oftentimes we do see where culture worships money in the sense of the more of it I have, the more freedom I have, right? But there's also the healthy side of that, right? We're talking about the unhealthy, but the healthy side of that also would be balance. Now you see a lot more in culture where fitness and health is regarded a lot more highly than it was 15 to 20 years ago. And if you go back in time, there were different phases in cultures far and wide around the globe where if you were if you could eat more, right? The sign of a person who was successful was somebody who wasn't thin, and vice versa. And through the ages, these metrics have changed, right? Most of the time, it's in line with what we discover about it, i.e., health, typically. But then oftentimes too, we come back around and go, well, balance is better, right? In the end. But the scoreboard mentality is not, you can't look anywhere and not see it, right? And it can be overwhelming for some who feel like everything is so inculcated with competition that we're not allowed to just be. And it is true. We do need to. Part of that scoreboard needs to be: am I getting the rest? Am I getting? Am I taking? Am I getting good personal time, downtime, uh, rejuvenation time? All those sorts of things also have to factor into that, right? So now that's even become part of the metric, right? So that's just how we are, folks. It's nothing to be afraid of, but it is something to be aware of. The other thing too is fear of negative evaluation. So this is a real thing. But the fear of negative evaluation is essentially people who kind of repel themselves against anything that even comes close to being competitive. Essentially, what you have is a race to the bottom. Those who are least productive and least competitive. I mean, it's just the way it is, and so they become, or they have an aversion or a fear of negative evaluation, that they will be judged, right? The reality is that we should only be using those sorts of things to gauge our own performance, right? If I'm overly comparing to others, then you're always going to be somewhere south or north of the spectrum, depending on who you're looking at. This is why comparison to any individual or individuals isn't fair. Why? You might be an artist. You're not an engineer, for example. But if you're a full fledged artist, you're not an engineer. An engineer is going to have skills and the abilities to excel in certain areas that you won't, and vice versa. So our strengths and weaknesses based on our personality and the skill sets that we've developed along the way. Now, some of that fear of negative evaluation too limits people from growing outside their lanes, growing. So you might have a little artisticness, artistic ability to you, and then you might also have a little more of a logic mind as far as your like an engineering mindset. I'm using these two extremes to explain, but you might have a mix, right? Well, you may not be as competitive as the people who are leaders in those particular categories, but you got a healthy mix, and that healthy mix allows you to move between groups and facilitate. So these are, which is also a skill set, which is also a strength on its own. So you see, every one of us has knowledge, skills, and abilities, talents that we can't compare to other folks, and they can't compare to us. We all bring a unique flavor, right? Just like food, we all bring a unique flavor and we're a different mix. We have similarities, but we're different. And we need to be enthusiastic about those differences, not, well, they are this or they are that, or they can't do this or they can't do that, or they can. And oh, let's elevate and applaud them. No, let's just appreciate everyone's knowledge, skills, and abilities and those talents that they're bringing to the table, right? How do we get to food and tables? Anyway, but fear of negative evaluation is a thing, and it's definitely something to caution yourself about, not in a fearful way, just be aware of it. If you find yourself kind of moving away from competitive environments, ask yourself, am I afraid of that? Or is it just something I'm not interested in? Because that's completely valid, right? And I'll be interested in certain things. I like to bowl and I don't mind competing in most things, but I'm never going to walk in and go, okay, I'm going to compete in bowling, right? I'm not competitive at it. So I suppose if I spent the time and energy and so forth, I could probably get better at it, but it's not my thing. And so we all have to make decisions and maximize our time. Okay, I tell you all of that to tell you this. So imagine within our organizations now, right? Because we do talk about look at our organizations where we tend to come together in groups, and then so much ripples out from that into culture and then our own personal lives and relationships and all of this. But if you look at it, the scoreboard mentality, as simple as did I eat healthy today? Did I not eat healthy? Did I get the rest? Did I not get the rest? Was I productive? Wasn't I productive? Some of it's a go, no go, right? For ourselves. It may not be that there's this scale, but there is an awareness. I am or I'm not. I am or I'm not. Did I get the exercise I should have got today? Or didn't I? Right. So constantly there is a level of this within us, even if we're not, I should say subconsciously, because consciously we're not always aware that we are monitoring ourselves. And then sometimes some folks just don't care. Their measure of their scoreboard mentality might be that, hey, I don't care about anything. I don't give a hoot about any of the stuff. I'm just going to be a glutton, right? Glutton of life. And I'm going to be happy, right? Because their goal isn't to live beyond 35 or 40. Their goal, perhaps they could care less. They're like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy life, and then it'll be what it'll be. And that in itself is its own scoreboard, right? So you can't really escape it. So it's good to make friends with it and work not to allow yourself to become fearful about it. So it's natural, it's normal, it's just who we are. All that said, in organizations, scoreboard mentality. The thing about a scoreboard is, we use check sheets, we have metrics, we have signs, we have, hey, how are we performing? We have performance boards, we have hour by hour boards, we have all kinds of different scoreboards, right? If you do Gemba walks, your management team doing your walks, you've got a Gemba board, PDCA, plan, do, check, act. You've got all kinds of performance situations, but you also have this as much from the electronic, the latest and greatest that's cranking out right from your ERP, MRP, and so forth, all the way to those people just using a whiteboard or flip charts doing their scoreboard. Now, my dad, he worked in the Forest Service, and I can't remember, but he was in, I think, I am not, a whiz with forestry, but I think he was in a mill of some sort. And he put a small chalkboard, back then it was chalkboard, a chalkboard, and it was a small one, and he split it in half, and it was days and nights. And then they were to tally up the totals for whatever they work that they did in there, right? And he found that when he did that, not only did the overall production go up, but that the competition between them enhanced how much production there was because folks wanted to perform well. They didn't want to perform less than the other. And so there was a friendly rivalry. And you can have fun with it that way. But you can also use that individually. So if you're working in a particular, doing particular tasks or in a particular office or whatever it is, you can monitor your own performance, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be that you're competing directly against somebody else because they don't do the same job you do. But you compete with yourself, you're competing with yesterday, you're competing with a week ago, you're competing with last year, and your organization is too. So if you get in that mindset, and it isn't like you got to go bananas, just mild, continuous, you know, steps of improvement every day. That's what it is. It's like a sheet of paper every day, or better, hopefully more than a sheet of paper. And before you know it, you're cruising along and you're doing great. And you're taking the time saved to then reinvest in more improvements and continue on. Also, the other thing about the scoreboard, what it does is when it's a visual, then that reinforces. This is one of the reasons why I do like, whether it be an electronic video board or, like a TV monitor, big one, or a whiteboard, something significant, fairly significant in size in the open where people can see it, because then they can go, okay, hey, we're doing great, and you can also use it as a celebratory thing. Hey, when we, hit our goal, then X, Y, Z, and then you can start putting in some incentives and that sort of thing and have fun with it that way. So the scoreboard mentality is great, but the scoreboard mentality reinforced by physical action. This is another reason why reorganizing the physical layout of your workspaces, whether it be a site level, whether you're in a factory or offices, doesn't matter what. But when you're making physical changes, let's say you have a break room and it's vintage 1985 and it's never been updated. Now, this isn't a problem most people have, but I'm using this as an extreme example. You have your own, I'm sure. It's vintage 1985. And every time you go in there with your team, you're just like, oh, the energy comes down, whoa, right? And you realize this. So what do? You get a few folks together and you clean it up, you paint it up, put new carpet down, put in some new tables, whatever. You dress it out, spend a little tiny bit of money and a little elbow grease, boom, and you brought it into 2025. Now people come in, they're fresh-faced, they're excited, they're enthusiastic. Now, boom, we're focused on the task, we're doing the thing. You're reinforcing your activities and your success and your movement forward and upward as an organization and as individuals when you make physical changes. This is another reason why you go work out to get healthy, and then you start to see changes in your strength. Oh, my strength is getting better. Next thing I know, and everything builds positively on itself. If you went and worked out and you were going to be better health, but yet you weren't stronger and you didn't have, I didn't have to go down 2 pound sizes, all these things. If it was a negative outcome, you definitely wouldn't be doing it, right? But it isn't. When you do physical things or make changes physically to your environment at work or in any regard, you are essentially reinforcing the improvement effort. And when you reinforce that, creates a loop. And then people start to go, hey, what else can we fix and do and improve upon? Hey, I'll volunteer for the next special little side project we're going to do. And then there's an energy, and the energy level kicks up. And next thing you know, you guys are off to the races and you're doing fantastic. So you can see the scoreboard mentality, just briefly talking about it there, is a thing that can kind of create a surge, but can also keep you on track, obviously. And it can help you also catch yourselves and hone in on those things that are preventing you from improving. This is the whole notion behind continuous improvement. Oh, wow, we're struggling with this. How do we tackle it? We get some heads together. We try to come up with some solutions, test them out, make some improvements, and so forth and so on. And then we move ahead and we grow from that. And so that's a great way to approach it. All right, folks, just a short walk down the scoreboard mentality. It's in the book. Highly encourage you to get it. It's pretty inexpensive, and I think your entire team would find value in it. Um, Remember, every day, 3 to 5 times a day or more, uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage people. And when you do that, not only are we helping to shape and grow culture in a positive way, but we are growing ourselves in a positive way. And that in itself is a scoreboard mentality, right? Okay, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.